Okay, this was from Janny. This is a great, I'm just picking these randomly, and this is a really great question to follow with. So you asked, Janny, what qualities can Venus use from the Earth since they share with one another? Yeah, so the Venusian Sphere is the Earth's higher self. Technically, it's the Earth's pure self. And I've showed the Venus key a lot in different lectures lately. So you can just kind of bring that to mind, how the Earth and Venus are actually completely linked. And so the Earth really gets its inspirations and its sort of exalted nature from Venus, if you will. And Venus is really transmuting the solar forces. So the stream kind of goes Earth, Venus, Sun. So the Venus works as a force that sort of steps down solar energy and makes it more digestible for the Earth, because once the Earth sinks below the horizon line, and below the horizon line is into matter, everything accelerates, everything intensifies, chaos ensues, and we reach peak matter, peak density, and everything kind of, the Earth kind of goes into an envelope of its own. It kind of goes into like a quarantine, or like there's a membrane around it. And it's where the I is developed, or where the human being develops individuality. And there's a whole reason why we materialize to this degree. But the Earth is sort of cut off from the rest of the cosmos. It's not as permeable to higher worlds as it used to be. And if you do want to permeate higher worlds, you have to make it through something called the eighth sphere, or the moon realm, or the moonlock, or the lower astral plane. So the Earth is sort of in its own little envelope, and it's surrounded by a plane that's the lower astral plane. And it's like a mirror realm. So the lower astral plane is also an exact mirror of the rest of the cosmos. So we're sort of in like a false cosmos, or we're in a mirror image of the cosmos that's darkened. And for that reason, we can't receive the wisdom of the sun directly, okay? Because we've reached the state of being such an individual. We had to then go through this process of the Earth was sinking deeper and deeper and deeper into matter, more and more and more entrenched in matter. It was sinking fast. And this is just a cosmic principle of development. And it was becoming harder and harder for the developing consciousnesses on Earth, the forms on Earth, to communicate and receive and know the sun, and basically to know spiritual forces. And the only way that the Earth and the beings on the Earth were going to be able to stay connected with the higher planes, which is represented by the sun, was if Venus stepped in and became the great intermediary between Earth and the sun. So Venus had to step in as this mother figure and take in all of the energy of the sun, all the forces, and digest them, kind of like a bird goes and gets all of the worms, right? And then sort of regurgitates them and gives them to the baby. This is sort of like how Venus works with the Earth. So there needed to be a planetary sphere that stepped in, that could be a transponder and a transmuter, and that would take all of the solar energy and give it to the Earth. And that was extremely important in the Earth's development. If this did not happen, then the earth would basically have sunk deeper and deeper and deeper into materiality, and it would have just died. And there would be no more evolution because there would be no way to receive the solar impulse. The solar impulse is also the Christ impulse. The Christ impulse and the solar impulse are inseparable. Christ, when we talk about, especially Jesus, he took on the highest solar spirit at the midpoint or the darker period of the earth, right? So, and of course, Jesus is often associated with the morning star, right? So the relationship between Venus and Earth is that Venus allows the Earth to receive the sun, the sun and the son. Because one of the things that's also very incredible is that the great adepts often come from Venus. The soul essence of them come from Venus. There's a whole thing where Rudolf Steiner talks about how the Buddha and the Bodhisattvas, they actually incarnate through Venus. So the Buddha's soul came through Venus. The Bodhisattvas, their souls also come through Venus, and obviously Christ. Now, I'm not talking about Val Thor, okay? So when we talk about these soul essences that are incarnating through Venus, we're talking about individuals that are off of the wheel of samsara. So when you get off of the wheel of samsara, when you get off of the wheel of karma and reincarnation, you pass right through the moon realm. It has no hold on you, or not a very big hold on you. It's a process of gradual transformation. And you go straight to the Venusian Sphere. And there's really not much karma left for you. And so you actually go through a reincarnation process that's different than other people. So when you get to a certain level of spiritual advancement, when you die, it's not the same thing. You don't have the karma. And it actually gets to a point where you behave like Venus, where you actually come into the earth to take on humanity's sins. You come to the earth to take on the karma of humanity. So when you start getting these bodhisattvas, these great adepts, the Buddha, the Christ, you're looking at individuals that are incarnating through the Venusian sphere, and they don't have any karma. So they're not going through the same death process and rebirth process anymore. They're not picking up this massive amount of karma from their sheath that's left in the moon realm. They are actually coming in and they are taking on karma. I'm going to say that again. So when you get to the great initiates, masters, powerful individuals, they are not so much taking on karma, though they will take on a little bit when they begin their incarnation. They'll have things that are echoes or whatever. They're not perfect. They're not, arrived. But when they incarnate, their soul essence is such that they will take on more than they personally have stored here. They take on more, and that equates to actually taking on humanity's sins. And so this is what is meant in esoteric Christianity when Jesus is associated with Venus, right? And Buddha is also often associated with Venus. He is an anthroposophy. The lords of Venus in the Vedas and manas, and this whole process of basically helping humanity to become an individual so that they can carry the sun within themselves. This is the whole point of the lords of Venus and spiritual teachers at this time, is to make it so that everybody understands that Christ is within them, that the kingdom of heaven is within them, because only then can we begin to interact with the Christ essence properly, because it is within us. And that was the whole point of Venus swinging into the chain and transmuting energy from the sun, it was, okay, now the sun has to be within you because you're not going to receive things externally anymore. And humanity used to receive everything externally. The Polarian epoch, the Hyperborean epoch, halfway through the Lemurian epoch, everything was received externally through the sun, through the cosmos, and the human being had no individuality. We were just living like a hive mind, receiving everything like babies through the cosmos. No, now we're at a different place. We start getting these great adepts coming in, preparing humanity to be an individual. And to be an individual, you have to understand that Christ is within you, that the kingdom of heaven is within you, and that's how you function. You function through developing your Christ consciousness within yourself. So in that way, the great adepts from Venus, like we're not talking about Valthor. Okay, we're not talking about these blonde, beautiful people that are coming in a spaceship that just sometimes so happen to have a German accent. Okay, we're not talking about any aliens coming from Venus. That's not the conversation that we're having today. We are talking about great souls that are adepts, masters that actually incarnate through the planetary sphere of Venus to the earth, and they have this essence within their soul. Now, going back to the Atlantean period and the Lemurian period, there were different planetary beings that walked among human beings. It was just part of how it was. This is the idea that the Romans and the Greeks held of the different gods. Okay? But then the moment that humanity gets their eye, gets their individuality, it's no longer appropriate to worship gods anymore because God is within you. Christ is within you. The whole process now is an internal process of transformation and transmutation. It doesn't happen externally anymore. You know, the Atlantean period, you know, you received all of your initiations through being around somebody. It was given to you. It was anointed to you. It was done for you by someone that was of a higher order than you. Now that can be part of it. You can certainly absorb certain energies and information from someone, that it still exists. It's not totally gone, but there's something else added to it now, which is that you actually have to learn to create and generate certain things within yourself. You have to take full responsibility of your emotions, full responsibility of your mind. You have to have discipline. You have to surrender to Christ consciousness, to Christ within you. We have a different task now than we did in Atlantis if we want to evolve. And so all of these teachings about like these Venusians, they came from this spaceship, and these federations of, you know, Venusian people and grays and these, you know, whatever, that actually is a false light caricature of actually a very sophisticated spiritual phenomenon that happened in Atlantis and Lemuria that doesn't even happen in the same way anymore. It's trying to make it's a recapitulation. It's individuals remembering that time period and then thinking that it's going to happen again, not understanding that there's been a completely different process that has occurred in the human being where that's never going to happen that way again. The whole point of the Lords of Mars or the Lords of Venus or any other beings from different planetary spheres, which was a bit more rare, the only reason these beings from different spheres came to the earth was because they wanted to help prepare the physical form so that they could begin to incarnate into it. Not so that they could continuously lord over us as like Anunnaki or something. You know, humanity and the world and planetary spheres, they don't evolve from the outside in. We evolve from the inside out. Okay, from the inside out. Once a planetary sphere gets to its peak point of physicality, which is different for different spheres, once it gets to its midpoint in development, there are no more gods. Humanity is no longer a child. There aren't any gods coming from other planets. All of that has happened in prior epochs to a degree where we are so physicalized and individuated now. The way in which that happened doesn't even fully make sense because it didn't happen when we were this physical, right? Not in the same way. We had a totally different kind of it doesn't even translate, right? So I have to take the time to point this out because we are looking back at our relationship with Venus and the Venusians, or the angels and the fallen angels. And I think that there's a real risk in the future, especially when the false disclosure narratives roll out. Like, listen, these seem like stupid, crazy ideas to people. Like, oh my God, aliens, creating humanity or terraforming planets, and this is so stupid. And, how could anybody have spiritual feelings around this or whatever? But I promise you, the moment that people start to see ships in the sky, the moment that their favorite mainstream celebrities start talking about it, they will be under a state of shock, and they will probably believe anything that people tell them. I mean, have the last 3 years not taught us anything about what people will believe and fall prey to, even if it's against their best interests? The next big con is going to be the alien con. It's going to be redefining how planets are formed, how planets evolve, how humans evolve. It's going to be one great big lie. And the hardest part is that, like with all great big lies, there's always some kind of truth. If you squint your eyes and look at it, you can see, oh, this is trying to discuss this. This is trying to discuss the lords of Venus or the lords of Mars. This is trying to discuss the angelic hierarchies. What this is really the spiritual hierarchies or the angelic hierarchies, which are associated with different planetary spheres. And human spiritual evolution in the solar system school, this is just turning into some great big weird 8th sphere delusion. And we have to know that, and we have to be ready for that, because the problem is that every human being probably has some kind of memories of when we did walk amongst great beings. Maybe you were one, So we do have these memories, and it's very important that these memories come forward and the knowledge is taught in the purest possible way. Because these topics are hard enough as it is. It's hard enough as it is to enter into these topics where, like, your consciousness, a million years ago, obviously on Earth is totally different. The density is different. It's hard to talk about things where you're looking at literal shifts in density and when our consciousness is literally firing in a different way. It's very difficult to enter into these conversations. And so there's lots of little mistakes that can be made, right? So we have to just be very honest about that. So studying Venus is a good way to begin to understand that, because again, when we talk about like Venus and Mars and earthly development, we're talking about something much, 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 much deeper than like alien beings coming from a different planet and messing around. There are two narratives of Earth history and cosmic history that humanity will be confronted with. Probably the first narrative is the fallen angel narrative, or the narrative of the fallen Venusians, and even some of the which eventually I associate also with certain factions of Mars, because the cosmos evolves. Souls go to certain planets at certain times, so you have to follow the stream. And so there's a false version of human history and planetary history and planetary evolution that is all external. It's all about, like, obviously I talk about this a lot, but I feel like I can't say it enough, which is that, you know, humanity was created like in a petri dish, like Zachariah Sitchin kind of stuff. And that these alien beings, you know, created people, that they terraformed Mars, that they terraformed Earth. This is completely insulting to humanity, and these narratives are delusions, and they are designed by dark entities in order to put you into a slave state, because the whole alien god thing, generally, if it can get talked about enough, I think it can get bumped out of the collective. But the whole thing is like, humanity was created from monkeys to be slaves. First of all, no, humanity was not created from monkeys. The monkey line or the ape line is completely different. If you look in traditional esoteric teachings, the monkey line or the apes are a totally different line to humanity. They do cross at certain points, but humanity's origin is not monkeys or apes. It's not reality. And then there's the slavery thing. So it's trying to get humanity to think that they're an animal when they're really a divine human. It's to get humanity thinking that, listen, I'm an animal, I'm an ape, I'm no better than an ape. And the only reason that I've risen out of the animal kingdom is because of these alien gods that have given me their genetics. And if I have their genetics and they gave it to me, they must have the pure genetics, and I'm half animal. So it's a way of lowering humanity into a fallen position, into a position where they're deluded, and where they don't understand their past, and they don't understand that actually the human being on Earth is divine. The human being was developing on the planet before apes even existed. The sort of ape line that we know happened in Lemuria, and it's like a fallen stream, you know, but human beings were existing for literally millions of years before that. And so this is where we have to understand the evolution of form from the different epochs, right? So all of these narratives in the New Age and in ufology, they're just sitting there like a trap waiting to go off. And they've had millions and millions and millions of dollars invested in them, millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars over decades and decades and decades, to literally get humanity to think that they are apes and that they are slaves, that that's what you are. And if you think that you are nothing more than an ape and a slave, then you're going to subconsciously be submissive to these people who apparently created you, that are one day coming back. And guess what? Oh my God, I can't believe it. If you do a genetics test, the Anunnaki or the alien gods are the billionaires in the world, and the people who are running the World Economic Forum are the people who are in power. So it's a way of basically claiming divine right. If you can tell humanity that they are genetically modified, that they were actually created by advanced human aliens, then you're essentially controlling exactly how they feel about themselves. So once you tell people that you were created through genetic modification by an advanced person, that suddenly allows this narrative to come forward where you can trace with genetics to a certain family or certain family lines or family lineages that have more of this alien DNA, that have divine right. Right? So it's kind of like this way where they're trying to get the divine right of kings back, by creating this false alien god narrative. And what do you know? There's some people that are more related to the alien gods than others. And so here we are in this new caste system, in this new weird hierarchy, and have a nice day. Meanwhile, none of it is true. None of it is true. Just because human beings have maybe been tampered with genetically, again, some kind of genetic tampering is not creation. You know, when you take when you take like some ape being that is on a planet or whatever, some animal, and you mix it with something else, you're not creating humanity. You're not creating anything. You're just hybridizing something. Humanity's creation has been going on for much longer. And there's also a stream and a lineage on this planet and in this cosmos that was never modified, that was never altered. So it's just patently false all the way around. It is a fallen lineage. It's the fallen angels that teach this. They are trying to turn the spiritual hierarchies into alien hierarchies and disconnect humanity from their divinity and basically paint themselves as gods. And, you know, when we understand these very ancient esoteric teachings, which, by the way, see, and this is the problem too, is that the average person gets caught up usually in dogmatic religion or certain types of spiritual beliefs, because these secret societies, they keep a lot of this information under wraps. So they have all this advanced information, and the dark ones will really only bring it out if it absolutely serves them. So what we have is humanity, the average human being, is functioning at a deficit. They don't have all of the information. And then you have these darker secret societies who have certain pieces of information and relics and books and material, and they quite systematically begin to craft a new religion by keeping humanity in the dark, by keeping humanity at this deficit, you know, arguing over basically dogmatic principles at this point. And then one day, right, when there needs to be a new religion, when we're approaching the age of Aquarius and the new age, when like the new consciousness comes forward, they want to be the people who lead that religion. So the whole thing about why so many people say this alien god religion is coming, it's not me, I wasn't the first to think about it, I just flesh it out in my work, is because humanity is supposed to move into a different type of spiritual understanding, which is to understand the spiritual planes as a science. So we're supposed to objectively know, like, and understand metaphysics and the spiritual world and universal law as a science. So spirituality, we're at a point where spirituality is no longer a superstition. It's no longer a series of stories. And it becomes essentially a science. It's mystery science or occult science. You know, you understand how your astral body works. You understand how your etheric body works. You understand how many planes there are exactly. You understand the prior epochs of the earth and how the earth developed over billions and billions of incountable years. You understand what happens with the soul when it dies. So we're supposed to have more of an objective scientific understanding now that we have our mind developed. But this system is an insult to that. The system that they want to bring in, this alien god system that they want to bring in, is an insult to that. And it's actually trying to lower the human being into this animal form by saying that all human beings were basically apes, and that the missing link is the Anunnaki and all this kind of stuff. It's dark. It's actually satanic. It's actually satanic. If you really know the true history of humanity and how humanity evolved through the Christ impulse within them and around them specifically, and then you see this stuff coming in, that is something totally different. This is a special kind of satanic material. And we probably won't know that for decades to come in a collective way, but it is. it is, because when you understand the Christ stream and the Christ impulse, you understand that human evolution happens through connecting with that impulse and that impulse alone. There is no evolution without the Christ impulse. There is no creation without the Christ impulse. It doesn't happen. It is the catalytic solar force that changes everything. Even as we're evolving day to day, the sun is emitting specific energies that's actually changing us slightly. The solar impulse is also the Christ impulse, so we evolve through the solar Christ impulse. That's the only way we evolve. It doesn't matter. And even if you have your genetics modified or whatever, that's not actually going to evolve you. If you take your genetics and you mess around with them and you're like, oh, I want brown eyes, or I want this, or I want that, you're not actually having those things. You're not actually experiencing what that is, because all evolutions have to happen naturally through our connection with Christ. And that actually leads to metamorphosis over very long periods of time. Right? And all of the great teachers and the great adepts simply do not use force. If there is any being that's using force, then that is not an essence that is good. They just simply try to bring us through teachings and through certain methods. They try to bring us in alignment and harmony with ourselves and with Christ within and with these forces within. And that's how we evolve life after life after life. But what we're seeing is a bizarre materialist interpretation of these things, where really, really, when it comes down to it, it's a bizarre religion that is about playing God. It's about controlling people. It's about harvesting people. One of the main tenets is genetic modification, which is why we are confronting this issue and have been confronting, things like, which is genetic modification for 3 years. It's because that's a tenet in this fallen angel religion. I mean, these people believe that they created, the people in power believe that they are the children of the Anunnaki, that they created humanity. They should rule over us, and we deserve it, because they created humanity anyway. And that's why they can practice eugenics. That's why they want to kill certain groups. That's why they do everything they do, is because they're in contact with basically demonic entities that tell them that they are the children of the alien gods, of the Anunnaki, of the lords of Venus, of whatever friggin' language you want to use. They think that that's it, that's them, and that it is their inheritance to control humanity, to modify humanity, to rule from the top. They believe that's their birthright, that they're chosen. They're the children of the gods, and everybody else is just beneath them. This is this sick ideology that these fallen creatures, these fallen angels, and the hordes of dark entities that surround them have told these people. And it's totally delusional. It's just dark stuff. And these people then go and do their bidding, and they try to bring on this new world system that supports all these beings in the eighth sphere and all these dark demented things. And all the whole system is around genetic modification, lowering humanity into thinking they're an animal state, to eventually get them into a transhuman state, because the fallen Venusian impulse leads to an animal consciousness. So when you look at Lemuria, 2 epochs before this one, there was cataclysms, there was a dark period, there was a period of the fall, and there were sort of these apes that were created from that process. And so this fallen lineage was there. And this is talked about by Blavatsky, but it's also talked about in a lot of really ancient Eastern texts as well. And so you can also get information by just viewing and tuning into this yourself, obviously. And so that was actually when the human nature is imbalanced in the feminine, it turns into an animal. It goes into an animal form. So it becomes animalistic when it's fallen in the feminine aspect, it becomes animalistic. Okay. And then when it's fallen in the Martian way or the Mars way, okay, it becomes too futuristic. It doesn't go backwards into the animal kingdom. It goes super hyper forwards and it becomes transhumanism. It's too futuristic. They try to use technology to transform their bodies and their minds and gain great powers instead of using Christ within themselves to simply have psychic abilities, to simply have spiritual powers. You can gain that. You have organs within you to already do that, but you have to work for it. You have to sacrifice for it. You have to be in service. You have to go through spiritual processes for that. But they want to do it all through technology. So when humanity begins to diverge in our era, they diverge in that Mars way and they turn to transhumanism. But that's just another lineage of the fallen angel impulse, which before they fell into a more animalistic ape form. And then no wonder why this story of them coming back and modifying the ape exists. Well, yeah, because that was their lineage. Okay, this is the fallen angel paradigm. It's the fallen angel lineage. It's the fallen angel story. This does not have to be your story. There is a higher truth, which is the real truth that obviously includes the fallen angels. It includes this whole story with genetic modification and apes and transhumanism. There's a whole story with that. We can talk about that. We can go very deeply into that. But we're not going to look at that and say that is reality. That is the only truth. That is human history. That's the only thing. That's ridiculous. It's not even how the planet works. The planet always has two different streams. It has a fallen stream and a risen stream, and they're always coalescing and they're always available. So in order to teach this properly, we have to talk about both. So you talk about the fallen angel stream and all those weird lies and the obsession with modification of the form. All the fallen angel stuff is always, how can I modify the physical form in order to survive? All of the Christ impulse stuff is, how can I transmute my pain in order to evolve? How can I evolve from the inside out? How can I work with the Christ impulse in order to evolve? You know, the external fallen angel stream is all about, how can I play God and terraform worlds and, you know, control human DNA. And it's all about trying to play God instead of aligning with God. I hope this makes sense. In my opinion, this is probably one of the main things that we need to talk about, because everything in ufology and in the spiritual community is hovering around this topic. It's hovering around the fallen angel narrative of the past and that plan for the future for humanity, and the risen aspect or the Christ impulse, and the genuine evolutionary path of humanity, which really has nothing to do with that except for to avoid the fallen angel path. It's to avoid this impulse in society within ourselves. It's to say no to that and to speak the truth in the face of that, and in that create more and more distance from these toxic forces that seek to feed on humanity, especially by sharing the sick delusion that is all over the New Age and that is all over ufology. We have to rid ourselves from it, and we have to understand the true nature of transformation, which is the Christ impulse within you, within me, within everyone. And at no point is that an external thing. It is always an internal thing. So I'm going to leave you today. Thank you so much for joining me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. If you like this kind of content where I answer questions, please consider supporting my work by joining my private platform. It's about $9.99 a month. I try to keep it really low. And I do about 3 hours of just answering your questions every 2 weeks. So every month alone, there is like 6 or 7 hours of extra content that I do, and I just focus in on whatever you guys want to know. So if you like this conversation, do go and support my work there. If you also want to support my work but don't want to have a membership, you can also make a donation. That really helps me keep these videos going. I'm completely supported by you. So thank you very much, and I will see you in our next